So to interact with the Kubernetes, I need one utility, okay, which is a command line tool. So kubectl is a command line tool using which I can interact with the Kubernetes. Once you have created the cluster, you should be having this. So using kubectl command, you will be able to like interact with this cluster here. Okay. You know, like there are some components again in the master. We have like API server, scheduler, controller, and etcd. In the worker node, we have something called kubelet, kubeproxy, and the container runtime. Okay. So you are going to write some manifest files. So to create pods. Okay. So what you are going to do is you are going to create some manifest files like a pod.yaml, and you specify the pod specifications so that pods are created. Okay, but when you need like multiple copies of pods, so what object you are going to use? You are going to use like deployment object. Okay, so you're going to create some file called .yaml, and this file name could be anything, but inside that the kind should be of type deployment, because you are going to create the replicas. You need multiple copies of pods. So similarly, we have seen like how to create services as well. So again, in services, we can create like different types of services. Okay. So if you want to expose within the cluster, we use something called cluster IP. If you want to expose to the outside world, to the users, you either need to use node port, or you can use load balancer. So these are the services we can use and expose our pods outside the world. So today what we'll see is we'll try to have some deployment done. We'll try to create some, we'll try to write some manifest file. Okay. And we'll name this manifest file as something that mypods.yaml, something like that. So then I'm going to like execute this. Okay, I'll pass these commands using kubectl. So the commands will hit my k8s cluster, and it is going to create some pod. Okay, so the pods are created. And the pod which is created, I should also expose the pod. How are I going to expose the pod? Node port or load balance. Okay, so to create a pod, can you tell me what is the thing I need? Okay, so someone asked you to deploy as a pod. What is the first thing you are going to do? We have a cluster actually already. So there is a cluster setup done. There is a cluster already. Okay, so the requirement is to create a pod. So to create a pod, what you are going to write? Some manifest file. Okay, so in manifest file, what is that you are going to include? So they are asking like you to deploy some Nginx pod or something like that. So what is the image you are going to use? So you are going to use image is nothing but Nginx. Okay, so they are going to ask you to deploy a Redis pod. So what is your image? Redis pod. Okay, so did you convert any of the images till now? మీరు ఇమేజ్ కన్వర్ట్ చేశారా ఏదన్నా బిల్డ్ చేయలేదు మీరు ఒక ఇమేజ్ అదే 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 అడుగుతాను బిల్డ్ చేశారు కదా సో యూజ్ యువర్ ఇమేజ్ అండ్ ట్రై టు డిప్లాయ్ ఇన్ Kubernetes. Okay, so you have your specifications, right? So can you tell me applications wise what images you have built? Nginx still petclinic, right? So we'll take the petclinic, okay, which you are aware of. Okay, so using petclinic, what I'm going to create, like I'm going to deploy as a pod. Okay, so I think like there are some petclinic applications which are running here. So I have pushed where I have pushed these images, hub.docker hub. So this is a recent one actually. I have pushed this petclinic. Okay. So how did I build that image? So I have taken this code from the Spring petclinic. Do we use this code only, right? Spring petclinic. So here, if I want to like change some properties or something like that, okay, I can go to this source main. So there is something called application.properties. Okay. So in the application.properties, what I'm going to do is, so where should my application listen? So that is where I'm pointing. Okay. So 8060. So based on this, my application is also listening on 8060. Okay. So the same application I've converted into Docker image, which is listening on 8060. Okay. So now what I will do is first I'll create a deployment.yaml for this. Okay. So to create a deployment.yaml, where you're going, like I'm going to like Kubernetes.io. So though I don't know to write deployment file, it is fine. So what I'm going to search here in the documentation, deployment. Okay. So Kubernetes.io is a official documentation for Kubernetes where you can find all the details. So what is that I'm going to take here? So I want to take one deployment code. There is a sample deployment code. Okay, I'm going to copy all of this code. That's okay. So what I call is my pods.yaml something. I can name anything to this. Okay, or I can call my petclinic app dot. So I'm going to paste this code. So I need to make some changes actually here. So replicas I don't need like 3 replicas. I'm fine with one copy of quad. So here label wherever I have see this deployment. Okay, what is the name of the deployment here? No, the default name what they have given. Nginx hyphen deployment. Okay, so I want to change that as a petclinic hyphen deployment. Okay, this is the petclinic hyphen deployment, and wherever the labels if there are right, I'm going to just give as a petclinic. Petclinic. So name of the this is the name of the container. We'll give the petclinic is the name of the container. And what is my image now? I do not want to use Nginx. So which image I want to use? Okay. So petclinic, but this is not from the official vendor, right? So I need to take this like this. Okay. Petclinic slash become DevOps slash petclinic. And what is this container port? Where is my container port listening? Which port it is? 8060. Okay. Because my image, this application is listening on 8060, right? So I have made these changes. Okay, if you see all of these details, what are these? So these are nothing but we have already, these details are already present with us. So only we have made modified wherever the app is there, wherever the image is there. That is what I modified. Yeah, only that is fine. If you modify that, that is fine. So now if I create this, I am going to create a pod actually. So what I'm going to do, kubectl apply. Let me see if there is any deployments. If there is, I'll try to delete that. Kubectl, there is a deployment actually. I have deleted this. Okay, so I'll try to see if I have any pods running now. Okay, so there are no any pods running. Also, let me see how many namespaces I have. So there are some things namespace I created like pets, Saturday, and all. So I will see if there are any pods there as well. Kubectl get pods in this namespace. So let me see if there are any pods in the Saturday namespace. Hyphen in. Okay, Saturday I don't have any pods. Let me check in pets. Here also I do not have. My there is something called monitoring namespace. We'll check. There is some Prometheus deployment that happened here. Let me delete that. So what is the command to delete a deployment? Under deployment name. So this is the deployment name. So whatever that hyphen is coming, right? That is with the okay. So we have deleted all this. Now let's check the pods in the default namespace. So there are no pods. Now let me create. Okay. So what is that I created now? My petclinic app.yaml, right? Okay. So let me use the kubectl apply app.yaml. Okay. So this is going to create the pods. Okay. It has created, right? So now let me check the pods kubectl. So it is creating. Meanwhile, also let me see if I do have any services. So there are some external load balancer services that I do have. So let me delete those ones. Okay. So okay, you can leave that as it is. So now what I want to do is I want to so I have a pod created right now. Okay, kubectl get pods. Okay, if you see what is this? Actually, it's your pet clinic application which is running as a pod. Okay, but you know this pod is it exposed now? No, right? So I want to expose this pod. Okay, whenever you create a pod, so till now we know how to bring in a pet clinic application. Okay, we have seen how to bring up using a jar application. Just you can use Java hyphen jar and the Spring petclinic.jar. You can get that application up. So we also seen like we can build that application as a Docker image. Then how to make it run as a container in the Docker. You can use Docker run container name. Okay, and the image if you specify, you can bring it up. You need to do the port mapping there. So your container port and the host port. Now we are seeing the same application, but in the Kubernetes. Okay, how we want to expose. Now let me use a so in Kubernetes as we discussed, like there are different types of services to expose the pod. Okay, so now this is a cluster actually. So there is a Spring petclinic application that we have created as a pod which is deployed. My petclinic application is deployed as a pod now. Now this pod I want to expose to the outside world. Okay, so to expose this to the outside world, what is the service I'm going to use is load balancer. Okay, so I'll take this load balancer now. So I'm not aware of that load balancer service, how it is. So I'll check in the documentation. So I'll check the documentation for services. So this is the service I have here. Okay. So if you want to like create a default service, you can use this service. And all these are like default services. But I want to go for load balancer service. Okay, this is of type node port service. And I do actually need service of type this. So let me copy this service. We'll go back to my server. So what I'm naming this as petclinic service. Okay. So petclinic service dot ML. So I'll paste as it is. I'll make some changes. So these are all not required here. Status load balancer and all is not required. Okay, this cluster IP is also not required. So can you tell me where is your container port listening? Okay, so 8060, right? So you should tell that 8060. Okay. So this is the service port, load balancer service port, whatever it is. So I want to also change my selector values. What will be my selector value now? App pet clinic, right? So I'll remove this. App pet clinic, I'm going to remove this. And so what I'm going to name this as pet clinic service. Pet clinic. Pet clinic app hyphen service. Okay. So this is nothing but my YAML file. It's a manifest of service of type load balancer. Okay. So whenever I create a pod, right, in Kubernetes, so generally these pods are just created. Okay. So let's say I have created a one pet clinic pod. So my pod is nothing but again an application. It's an app. Okay, so but it is running as a pod. Okay, this pod is not exposed to the outside world now. So if people wants to connect to this pod, they can't connect directly to the pod. Okay, so what they can connect is they can connect to the service. So in between I'll have some service. And this service is of type should be load balancer. Okay. Now this service is going to talk to this pod. Now this service is going to talk to the pod. Okay. So how this service is understanding this is the pod, you should send the traffic. Why? Because this pod has some label. Okay. What is the label we have given? App pet clinic. Okay. Here, whenever I created a service, so it had one more thing called selector. So in the selector, there was also a similar tag called app pet clinic. Okay. So this is what we had. App clinic and app pet clinic. Okay, but my service is having a selector. Okay, selector's value is app pet clinic. Okay, and my pods label is also having a pet clinic. When they both are getting matched, right? So this time my service will know. Okay, this is the pod that belongs to this service. Okay, so that is how the service is going to send the traffic to this particular pod. Let's say if I have n number of pods, every pod will have the respective label. Okay, so that is how this service will identify its pods and send the traffic to the pods. So now I have created this YAML file of service. So if you see the service, it is having a selector called app pet clinic. So now let me create this service. kubectl apply -f petclinic service .yaml. Okay, so what it is created? Petclinic app service is created. Now let me get services. Okay, so this is the service I created. And what was the service type I created? Load balancer. Okay, this is the load balancer service it got created. And this is the endpoint that has been resulted here. And now I do have like so my pods are created as a deploy, right? Deployment. So I can see using deployment as well. Okay. But also I can see as a pods as well. Okay. So if you see the difference between the deployment and the pod. So what is the name of the deployment here? The clinic -deployment. Okay. But what is the pod name here? -deployment some ID has been attached. So whenever see you pod name is like this, like hyphen two times. So you should understand these pods are created using the deployment object. So if you want to like get more details about the pod, there is one more command called kubectl describe pod and the pod name. Okay, my pod name is this. So I'm going to copy this. Okay, so now we can see all this, how it is created and all the details it is going to show. Okay, if you see, these are the details actually. In which namespace the pod got created? Default namespace. Okay. On which worker node the pod got created? This one. And if you see what is the IP address and whether the status of the pod it is. Okay. And you can see the what is the image it used. Become DevOps dash petclinic. Here we have post. Just there. So now let me get the services kubectl get SVC. Okay. So there is a service I created to expose these pods, and the service is of type load balancer. Okay. So let me copy this address. So getting right. So this is a petclinic application actually. Okay. How did we expose? By using load balancer service. Okay. So now this is deployed in Kubernetes cluster. Okay. So we can scale pods. Okay. I do have like only one set of pod is created in the backend now. If I go to my worker nodes, kubectl get pods. How many I have? Like only one pod is running. Okay. So let's say this petclinic application is being accessed by many people. Okay. So then how can I scale my deployment? So I showed you like you can also increase your pods. Kubectl scale deploy. What is your deployment name? Petclinic -deployment. Then replicas equal to 3 or 4 depending upon how many you need. You can scale accordingly. Okay. So now I can check the pods. Kubectl get pods. Okay, you see the rest of the like two pods are already running. Okay, so there was only one pod initially. Now I have one more pod running and like two are in the pending state. Okay. Now if I see this, I might hit the request might come for me from any pod. Okay, so backend lo now 4 pods ఉన్నాయి. Okay, because I've scaled my pods. Okay, I've told my replica should become 4 -replica is equal to 4. but I don't know like which pod is sending me the response, because whenever I hit whatever is that I'm going to hit this, this is basically a service. Okay, it's a load balancer service I'm going to hit. So it is going to see the available pods, and it is going to send the request to the 4 pods, and it will give me a response from any of the pod. So in this case, now let me scale down. Okay, so I scaled up my pods whenever there is huge traffic. Okay, but let's say my traffic got decreased, so I want to keep my pods only 2. What is the command now? kubectl scale deploy. What is my deployment name? Petclinic deployment hyphen replicas equal to 2. Okay, so I'm making my pods to be only have like 2 pods. Something I'm not. And it's here. Okay. So petclinic hyphen deployment hyphen replicas equal to 2. So what is that happened here? My pods like they have become like 2 pods. kubectl get pods. Now we have seen like there are 2 pods. Okay. There are 2 pods running. So the customer will get a response from any of the pod. Okay, but they are not aware of this. But in the backend, like depending upon if there is huge traffic coming from the customers, right? We increase the pods. Okay, and this should be happening automatically. Okay, for that there are some other concepts which we'll see later. But this is how we deploy your application as a pod, and the prerequisite is if you want to deploy any application as a pod, so you need that application to be available as an image. Okay? Only since my petclinic application was available as a Docker image, I could straightforward only deploy that application in my Kubernetes cluster as a pod using the deployment object, and again I was able to expose this application using a service object, and the service type was load balancer. Okay, so in the previous session you already like converted this application into a Docker image, right? Spring petclinic application. So whichever it is pushed into your registries, into your Docker Hub registries. So now create a deployment YAML file. Okay. So create the pod, but if you create the pod, you will not be able to access. So create another type load balancer. Okay. Once you create a service of type load balancer, now you should be able to access the pod. Okay. So whenever you create a now, so let me show few things. kubectl get SVC. So my service is petclinic app hyphen service. Okay. I want to get more details about this. kubectl describes the service name. Petclinic app hyphen service. Okay. Now you could see right there are like in the endpoint section, you are able to see like two pod IP addresses. What are these? These are the pods IP addresses, because I had like 2 pods as part of my service. Okay. So whenever you see like 2 things, then you could identify or understand that there is a relationship established between your deployment and service, because the labels were matched. So that's the reason the pods are added as an endpoints. Whenever you hit your service, right, which is the service you are hitting, this petclinic app service URL. Whenever you hit this, it will automatically forward the traffic to these 2 pods. Okay. Why? Because the 2 pods IP addresses are added as endpoints in the service. If in case if you using your service, if you are not able to access the pods, maybe you should check this kubectl describe service name. If the pods are not added here, okay, it means that so there is some issue between your labels or selectors. Both are not matching. That's the reason they are not added here. And So what is the type here? Load balancer. What is the selector here? Petclinic. And these are my pods IP addresses. 192.168.41.182, 192.168.56.79. Okay. So now let me use kubectl get pods. So this is showing that two pods are running. But I want to see where are these pods scheduled on which worker nodes. What is the command for that? Kubectl get pods -go byte. Okay. So now you could see these are the pods are scheduled on this particular instances. There is an worker EC2 instance here, which is nothing but your server. And where is your pod scheduled? Okay. And now what are these actually? These are the IP addresses of your pods. Now, could you able to match between this and this? Okay. This 192.168.41.182. And what was the other thing? 192.168.56.79. Okay. So this is the another pod IP address. So you could understand these are the pods IP addresses. So now you should be able to do this. Okay. To proceed with the next Kubernetes concepts, we should have like minimum of this knowledge. Okay. So then only we can.